Good morning, everybody. Welcome. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah Sieg Avagnoni.
bringing you this week's Ascended World. So, yeah, this beautiful spring day. Spring here finally.
We're getting ready to have spring storms, which we need because we're in such a drought. But
Yeah,
it's an unusual time of year for us to be in a drought too. But
right, because it's usually the wetter time.
we have the dry season and the wet season, and this year we had a kind of wet summer and a really dry winter. So, but everybody's doing it different, so Mother Nature can too.
That's right.
Or the facet of us that is Mother Nature.
That's right. Yeah, what a reflection, right? If you look at that at the collective level, it's like, well, because we never think of that. We always externalize it, right? We always externalize.
Absolutely. Yep.
And it's funny because what always makes me cringe a little bit is like my mother's always like, Mother Nature's in menopause. And I'm just like, what are you talking about?
Oh my God.
No, no such thing. Mother Nature, Gaia has it's just shifting and changing constantly, right? We tend to do that though. We look at Gaia, we look at Earth, we look at, the universe and the stars as something outside of us, right? Which is why, like we talk about astrology and we talk about all this other stuff and everybody gets so stuck into, the
Mercury in retrograde.
Right. Well, full moon and this moon and that moon and the orange moon and the purple moon and the polka dot moon,
strawberry moon, and right.
But everybody
and even eclipses and like the equinox yesterday.
Right. The equinox yesterday, which and I'm not saying that they're not valid. We do have an energetic interaction in our relation with all of it, right? But it's only the thing for us to always remember is it's only a reflection of ourselves, of what's going on within. So it's not.
And in addition to that, it's also a reflection of look what we did, look what we can do.
Right. And we create these cycles and we alter these cycles, we do all this stuff. And then it goes back to the weather thing. So it's funny because that's what I say to people a lot, of many that I talk to, is remember, yes, does that energy hold credence collectively? Absolutely. However, we're the ones who create the energy to begin with, and that's what we forget, right? So it's really,
which is stepping into that victim or stepping out of the self-responsibility.
Right. To say, yes, we created that. And yes, that energy is what we hold collectively. And that's what we are now manifesting to show it, to remind us that's what we have going on inside. So that's why it's important to look at, not the moon is making us do this. No, we're doing this ourselves. That's the difference. Very slightly different words and terminology, but good morning, Yasmin. So on to what we're talking about today, right? We have been looking a lot at presence. We have been looking a lot at acceptance, the benevolent detachment, right? That kind of stuff.
Right. And allowing and sitting with emotions and discomfort and
right. So
where you are.
Right. So that's a huge monster step for us, right? Because it's such a big message when we can sit and look at ourselves, right? Look and say, okay, what's going on, right?
What's here for me?
Right. And instead of judging it, what is it telling me, or what is it here to tell me? Right.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. Excuse me. There, it's true. So, what was I saying before I so rudely sneezed?
No, we've been talking about sitting with things and being present, and it's a big step to sit with that discomfort and to look at it and say what's here for me.
Yes. And so that is a message in itself. It's a huge example of being able to see messages with ourselves. So then we say, okay, well, then a big part of all this, and we even talk about it in energy work a lot, about how it's so important to transcend judgment, right? To get into a place of acceptance,
right?
To not judge something as good or bad, to just see it as it is. When we get to that place, however, here's the little tricky part, the little tiny tricky part that the ego likes to say, I can still insert myself here, is once we get to acceptance, then we justify ourselves in not moving forward by saying, oh yeah, I just accept myself as that. And instead of saying,
Right.
I accept that I believe that, right? There's a difference of saying I accept that I believe that, or I accept that I am that.
And I accept that this is good enough.
Yes, right. Because when we say I accept that I am that, then I'm accepting this is good enough. I have no hope of being any different. This is how I am. Right. And that.
Right. And that's the ego saying, okay, you want to sit with this? Let's sit with this.
That's right. That's
Let's
right.
really sit with this. Like you get nothing but this.
That's right. Let's just create it as a constant, right?
Right.
And that's what we say, and think about that. And so like when we call that acceptance, but is it really acceptance, right? Because acceptance, when we look at it from a consciousness standpoint, it's seeing something, right, as it is,
Right.
and knowing it can change at any given moment.
And it's also the definition of being present with it, because that doesn't mean that you're going to project it into the past or hurl it into the future. It's this moment. It's this presence right here, right now. And in that complete and utter acceptance and no judgment frees you to say, but the next moment could be totally different.
Right.
And I mean, that is such a slight difference, but a huge difference.
Right. Because so think about this. Think about like a parent, right, telling their kid, oh, well, you're not that smart.
Right.
It happens, right?
Oh yeah.
Right?
You're just not college material.
Right. Or you're just not gifted in that. Right. You're
not a math person.
Oh yeah. My kids. Oh, that kid's under my skin because yes. And I'll explain that laugh because my kids are like very intelligent. Both of them are very versed in many things. My oldest is so funny though, because she basically fell out of the womb talking. She was talking at a very early age. Language was so easy for her, all that kind of stuff. And she always said that math was not her thing. She wasn't a math person. And I was like, but you were in honors in AP math, right? It just was that you actually had to work at it a little bit. It's not that you're not a math person. It's that it wasn't as easy as the other stuff for you, right?
It might not have been your passion.
Right. Exactly. Where language and reading
that doesn't mean you're not a math person.
Right.
It's just you're not a passionate math person.
Right. And so, but we say that all the time, but then, you constantly reinforce it by saying, I'm not a math person. I'm not a math person. I'm not a math person. And well, you just create that over and over again. And you create that, that problem. Here's the thing. I am so completely immersed in this world and I love all this stuff, but yet I am good at math. I am good at like some analytical things, but I enjoy both sides of the brain, and it might not be my passion. I don't want to be a mathematician. I don't want to be a physicist or anything, although I do like quantum physics, but when it comes to, it's like, well, okay, yeah, I'm good at math too.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Cause I hear people all the time, like I've seen conversations go on in a group of people. Oh yeah. And then they try to up each other on like how bad they are at math or how bad you're like, oh, well, yeah, my son or my daughter had this kind of math homework and I had no idea what that was. And that's just not how I just have no idea, Right. And the reason I say that though, is because when we say that, we continuously recreate it. And it might sound like acceptance, right? You might argue to say, oh, well, I'm just accepting myself for as I am, right?
Right.
But then if you truly agree to the premise that we are all divine and infinitely capable, then anything we tell ourselves about ourselves is temporary because it will create a limitation. Right?
True. Yeah, because it defines it something other than the divine.
Right. Right. So if we're saying, I'm just not good at math, well, why not? You're the divine. You created math.
Right. Well, and it's difficult to say that we don't believe that we're the divine if we ever use the phrase I am, because that creates.
Right. Right. All the time. Constantly. So when we say, I'm not smart enough, I'm not good enough, and I accept that about myself,
Right.
right? When you say that, yeah, that's the first step to that is saying, okay, I see that. But like what we're saying is the thing that you miss when you come into acceptance like that is, so if I believe that I am whatever, right?
Right.
So you really have to add the I believe underneath the I am. And then to say, oh, because if you do that, if you think of something that you think about yourself, then you say, and instead you say, I believe I am. And then you step back and go, oh, well, why do I believe that?
Right. And that's the key to being present, is to
Right.
say, what is right here for me in this
Yes.
moment, so that frees me from it.
Yes.
And I hate to use the term lesson or you've learned or whatever, but it's like you've received the gift by being present with it. Now open it.
Yes.
Open it and actually embody the gift so
Right.
that the next moment you can get that present.
Right.
And I mean, you look at it that way and it's like, who wouldn't want that?
Right. Right. Otherwise, I'm like, yeah, you might sit there and look at that. I like that. That's a great analogy, because if you think about it, you sit there and look at the present, right? So the first thing you see is, oh, well, look at the pretty bow and the pretty paper, and it's a very
Right.
pretty box. And then you can look at it,
Or
and
it's big. Look how
Yeah.
big this box is.
right.
Yeah.
And then, but then if you just sit there and look at it, you never know. You never get the actual part about it. That's the present, the gift, which is on the
Right. And
inside.
imagine something's wrapped in this horrible paper and it's just this massive box, and you don't want to open it because it's such a big box, it's
Yeah.
overwhelming, and you open it and it's this little tiny crumb, and you're like, "Ah, and here I wasted all this time."
looking at the box and judging the box.
Right. Open the present.
Right. Which I mean, it's such a great play on words, because yes,
Right.
we don't. We just, so that's the little trick, right? Because we've been talking about this present thing. It's like, well, okay, so what is it you believe about yourself that you have accepted, right, as a
Yeah.
rule, but it has really, the ego has very, very craftily hidden it as a limitation.
Right. And I mean, there's so many examples that, if you're questioning, what do I do with my life? Well, okay, let's sit with where I am. It's easy to let that ego say, just be present with this.
Mhm.
Come to a place of acceptance. Come to a place of, this is good enough. And that keeps the ego safe. It keeps you in that sameness.
Mhm.
And that level of self-acceptance gets you no joy, no satisfaction, no it's like the whole reason you looked at it is negated because you
Right.
haven't opened the gift.
You're just looking at the box, which so that is a step in itself. So the first step is seeing it. Because sometimes it's sitting right in front of you and you have no idea, right? Like we go
Right.
through all these presents, all of them, every moment.
Right.
And so, like it's stepping back a little bit more and saying, what am I like, this is enough. Where am I telling myself this is enough? And I say that it is acceptance. This is all I will ever have.
Right.
That's a hidden limitation.
Right. Well, and not to plug our courses, but to plug our courses. There's so many things that hang off of that. It's like, okay, I don't trust myself to open that box.
Yeah.
I don't trust that I have created through my divinity something that's within that box that will have value to me, and that will, in the greater scheme of things, be the most amazing gift for myself.
Right. I'm not worthy of it.
I'm not worthy of that. And I'm not, I
don't know how
can't
to
come
see
to that place of gratitude for it.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And I'm afraid of the shadow that it might be hidden in it.
Right. And my guidance is through my fear that I shouldn't open the box.
Right. Right. Which is ego-based guidance. Yeah. Like that kind of so much. Right. But if you have that place, if you sit in that place of self-love, guess what?
Oh, absolutely. The box opens on its own.
What a
Because
great,
why would it not?
yes, of course. Then it's like, oh, let's open it, baby.
Right. Right.
Yeah. And so, let's talk about some examples because, it's challenging. It's a lot for us to talk about this. And I think a lot of times it's challenged because we are blind to it within ourselves, right? Like, so we're like, oh yeah, I get what you're saying, but that's not me, right? That's
right. How do I apply that? Right. No, absolutely. Absolutely. I know for myself in looking at ways to, reinvent myself or look at why I am where I am. And I found myself just saying, oh, well, I haven't been present for myself in this place. I've just sat in judgment of it. So let me do that. And it's like, oh, I haven't ever experienced that for myself. So this feels really good. So this is what I need to be doing. I need to just be sitting with this. And it's like, that's only receiving the gift. That's not embodying the gift. That's not internalizing the gift and using the gift.
And opening it up.
Right. And it's almost like, when you get it, you get like all your wedding gifts. It's like, oh, well, we're keeping that for good. We're going to keep that and we're not going to use that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and then I know, having dealt with my parents' 3,000 square foot house full of things that they kept for good, I didn't want them. And nobody else wanted them either. Right. So it's that thing where, what are you keeping for good?
Yes.
Versus using it. But that could be applied to, nourishing yourself through, I need to come to acceptance of where my body is and the way I nourish my body and the way I eat and the way I think about my physicality, and just come to a place of acceptance of that. But that's just the first step.
Well, or here's the thing, what comes to me too, right? There's, somebody who has always been known in their life for something, right? For being smart or happy or physically, active or, like athletic or a dancer, like we know many dancers and, things like that, or, right? So they've had an identity created. We've all had that, like we've all done that, right? I am this, I'm not that, like we're saying, I'm good at math, I'm not good at math, and whatever. But we do that like when we say, okay, so somebody who's been, say, a fitness instructor, right? Or a physical trainer, right?
Right.
You then say, well, I've always been very physical, and people have appreciated me on my physicality, right? And they have seen my value through looking at my physicality and through what I've done with others in physicality. So therefore, the most valuable part of myself is my physicality, and I'm in acceptance of that, right?
Right. So I will look no further.
Right.
I will be satisfied here.
And I will continue to only look at things that support that versus the things that might be in my heart that are not around the physicality. Right. Because that's, and then what happens, because the ego now has invested itself and said, well, that's what makes us valuable, is what people see as my physicality. Right. And look at, I mean, our entire culture for years with women, right? You're only valuable if you're good looking, but what's good looking depends on the week, right?
Right. Right. And God forbid, don't age.
Right. Right.
Don't age.
Yep.
Don't get gray hair. Don't get fat. Don't get
Yeah.
wrinkles.
Yeah. I mean, that's physicality too, right? So it's the same kind of thing. I'm like using this very specific example, say somebody who's a trainer, right? Who's been a physical trainer, right? Um, and an athlete and stuff. And then that's all they've ever been. So then they think of themselves only as that. So then every time they get an opportunity to do something that is not that, right? That is and say, their expanded consciousness is saying, okay, we did this. We saturated ourselves in it. And now let's do this. Let's move into let's balance ourselves, right? And let's really build into the, infinite ability of the non-physical, right? So it can be mental, it can be, analytical, it can be, non-physical. And then what happens is the ego goes, oh, but that doesn't feel comfortable. Right. But we accept ourselves as this. I accept myself as a physical person, a physical trainer and an athlete. And that's how I'm valuable. That's how I'm seen in this world. So that's all I can do. That's all I'm allowed to do. Right. And so then you think, well, and then what happens that goes along with that? Well, I'm just not that smart. Right. Then you have these little hidden thoughts. I'm not that smart. I'm great here.
That all props up the acceptance of that other piece.
Right. And so number one is to look at that and say that's the case. Well, then you say, all right, how about I insert that word belief in there, right? And say, so why is it I believe that I'm only valuable as an athlete or a physical trainer or in physicality? Why do I believe that the only thing that makes me valuable is my physicality? And then that's where, because you feel the change in energy as soon as you say, why do I believe that? Then it's like, oh, wait a second, you just turned the finger back around to me.
Right.
And then
it's just shifting that creative responsibility back where it belongs.
Right.
And not circumstances, but to the actual creative energy of yourself.
Because the ego will argue. Well, but people won't ever believe me as an intellect or as, something that's non-physical, because that's all I've ever done. They'll only believe me, or they'll only believe in me if I do that physicality, or if I stand behind my physicality, or do that physical training, or be the athlete. They won't stand by me or back me if I do this, because that's all they've ever known me and that's all I'm valuable as. But then you got to look at that and say, well, that's what you believe, right? So that's what you portray then, and that's what you project into the world, which is then the energy you hold, which is then how people.
Well, and that's what the universe returns back to you,
exactly,
magnified.
Right. So that's when we sit and go, good morning, Sandy. I was like, good morning. Funny.
Yeah.
So when we do that, so see, that's a great example. Like, so what's important for us to do is to say what we believe we bring to the world, right? And that can be, I'm a mother. That's my value.
Right.
And I can't, anything that I do that's not as a mother, right, is not as valuable.
Right.
And I accept that. And this is what we do. We do this though, culturally, that's another thing. And I accept that, well, my kids are home and I have to be brought up. That's all, I accept that that's all I'm valuable for, is being a parent, a mother or father or whatever. Right. And then, much more a mother, that's still culturally ingrained, although, it's changing, but it's still there. Right.
It is.
And so, and if you say, so like, then what'll happen is if you truly say, okay, so if I look at that and say, all right, well, I'm just going to come to acceptance of that. I'm not going to resent it or whatever. That's looking at the present.
Right.
But then when you say, I believe I am only valuable as a mother, whoa, right? That changes that whole energy, right? 'Cause it's
Right.
like, well, why do I believe I'm only valuable as a mother? I existed before I had kids.
Right. Right.
And that's only one small piece of our lives, so then I can be valuable in other areas. I can be valuable, I can explore other parts of myself and be as valuable, if not even more. But when I say that, it's just we're limiting ourselves to, I'm saying this, even when I come to acceptance of it, like, because I mean, that's that is the hardest place for us to change from, is that place of comfort and acceptance, right?
Right.
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 And that's what I tell people who come into me, clients who come in and stuff like that, is like I've said over the years, it is far easier to work with somebody who's uncomfortable and propelled to get out of a situation than it is when they're comfortable and in acceptance of it.
Right. Well, and I think that a great way to look at what we're talking about here is call it the presence of self-responsibility.
Yes. Oh,
Is
that's
to-
nice.
Is to be present in the knowing that you're responsible for that moment.
I love that. I'm going to write that down.
And I mean, that right there is the ultimate freedom combined with the ultimate power.
Yes. It is. It is.
Because
And
and there's no room for judgment in there. No room
No.
at all.
no, it is presence. Yes. Like you said, presence and self-responsibility, presence and acceptance in self-responsibility, of saying, yes, like you said, I created that. I believe that. That's why you're saying, I believe that, because that's what you created through your belief.
Right. Which says nothing about the past or the future.
Mm-mm.
It is this moment right here, right now.
Yes.
And if you if you allow that to be only that moment, that means that the next moment or the next or the next or the next is infinite possibilities of what can be in that moment.
Well, once you hit that self-responsibility, which, again, shameless plug, we have the course all on that.
That's right.
But when we come to that from a place of complete self-responsibility and self-creation, is saying, I create that in every moment. That's what we always talk about in saying, and taking that full, the importance and consciousness on the self-responsibility is, when we take responsibility for all of our creation, all of our beliefs, all of what we are and who we are, then we can change it, right? If we don't
Right.
believe that we are responsible for it, well, somebody's at my front door. But if we don't take responsibility for it, then we at some level believe we can't change it,
Right.
or that we're a victim
Right.
to it at some level, right?
Right, which is, the opposite of presence and the opposite of self-responsibility, it doesn't flow with who we are, which I think that's why so many get stuck in
Mhm.
places, is this lack of embracing these particular concepts.
Yeah.
And
Well,
so
and
a good way to figure out, is this something that really is pertinent to me, is where in my life am I stuck?
mhm.
Where in my life am I stuck in a job? Am I stuck in health? Am I stuck in my spirituality? Am I stuck in my passion or lack of passion?
Right. Right.
Am I stuck in who I think I am?
Mhm. Yeah,
I
exactly.
mean, that's the perfect question to ask. Am I stuck in my finances?
Yeah. And when you say, well, let me look at that, let me just sit with that.
Let me be present with that,
Present
just
with it.
in this moment.
That's right. That's right. So it's a matter of, yeah, because when we start being present, and that's the importance of that presence, right? That presence is that we don't look at it. right? We're so
Right.
busy. We're so busy at looking at what I could be, what I can't do or couldn't do or couldn't do in the past or,
Well,
could
and
be
we're so
possible.
focused on doing.
Right.
Presence is not doing.
No, it's just being. Yeah.
It's just being. So when you feel stuck in something, not doing something about it feels so counterproductive. It's like, but I
Right.
should be doing
Yes.
something.
I want to change this. I want to change this. And it's
I
like we were
should be
talking.
making something happen.
Right.
And the first step of that doing is that just being present with it and coming to that place of self-acceptance.
Yeah. Because we forget the message. We forget looking for the message because everything in this present moment is a message back to us, like on what to remember.
Right. Well, and I caught myself, I said the self responsibility, or self acceptance, which is different than self responsibility. Self acceptance is that, okay, this is it. This is as good as it gets. I accept this as all that there is. Versus self responsibility is, yep, I did it. I made it. I created it. And I can now create something different.
Right. Yes, I created and I accept responsibility for creating everything that is in this moment. And now,
Right.
yeah, we can do something different.
Including the stuckness or the suffering or the joy.
Yeah.
Or the joy or the passion or the springboard to what it led me to. I mean,
Right.
there's just so many possibilities.
Yep. Yep. So that's where it's a very, see, like we're getting to some very fine tweaks, right?
It
And
really is.
the acceptance part is huge in itself, right?
It is. Absolutely. And without that, you almost can't have the responsibility.
Right.
Because you're sitting in that place of judgment saying, no, I still am not feeling what I should be feeling about this.
Should be. Right. Yeah.
Right.
And
And
victimhood.
so-
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So without the acceptance, you can't have that follow-on responsibility that allows you to make it different.
Yes.
Or it's opening the package.
Yes. Yeah. And saying to ourselves, yeah. Well, it's that whole coming to it saying, well, look at what I created. And if I choose that, if I feel guided and it feels like it's to do, then I can change everything in the next moment
Absolutely.
on a dime.
Right. And the universe will leap through infinite number of hoops to bring it all exactly into alignment for you.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yep. To quote The Alchemist, right? The universe will conspire to create it. Yes.
Absolutely. Right. This feels really, really good.
It really does. It does. So,
I hope that people are able to see how it applies to the specifics of where you're stuck and coming to that place of acceptance and then responsibility to allow it to be different.
Right. Sandy says it's very challenging, but feels really good and true.
Right.
Yeah. 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 Because well, first of all, doing this is adding extra steps into what we typically do, right? So then the ego goes, oh, I got to do something else. Like, I got to do something else. And it's like, no, you got to stop doing. That's the thing.
And that's the hard part. We believe it's the hard part just because we are out of practice.
Yep. Yeah.
And it's like it's that muscle, exercising that muscle you haven't used in a long time.
What comes to mind is, this time of year, we're getting into gardening season, right? And tilling the ground, pulling the weeds, putting new stuff in, filling things out, trimming them back, or, whatever, training stuff. And then, at some point, and it's a constant, many who've done gardening know, like even when you're doing vegetable gardens, it's constant weeding and tending to the plants and everything else and feeding. Well, and you're constantly doing, and it's all nourishing. It's all nourishing the land. It's nourishing yourself, right? Because it's an interaction with the grounding of the earth.
Right.
And so, yes, it is a great exercise in doing that. And then, what a great analogy is, at some point you stop and go, look at how beautiful this is, or look at how abundant this is, or look at what I have been a part of creating. Right. Do we stop and do that? A lot of times we don't, though, because we're always like, on to the next season, on to the next season, on to the next season, and doing that for ourselves. Like, why would we not give that gift to ourselves to say, well, look at what I create in my life every day?
Absolutely. I mean, you woke up and look at the day that you created for yourself, even the sun rising.
Right. That's what I was going to say, a beautiful sunrise or a beautiful sunset. Or, a beautiful flower,
well, and I created amazing eyes that can take it all in.
Right. Oh, or senses, the physical senses, period. Right.
Right. And that, my eyes see that sunrise, and that triggers certain things within my body, certain chemicals within my body that says, wake up, energize, get going, move, digest, breathe, respirate. I mean,
and it's not stuff you're thinking of consciously.
No, not at all.
And so we have mastered so many millions and millions of things in every moment, right? That we never stop and have gratitude for that, or acceptance. Well, gratitude comes after the acceptance, to say, oh, look at that. That's pretty magical, right? No matter, even if it's gray and dull and rainy and dreary and limited and lack filled, right? Then it's to say,
perceive it as lack filled.
Or perceived as lack filled in a way of whatever. Well, look at what I've created.
Right.
Okay. So it's easier for us to sit there and say, okay, so let me come to acceptance on that. But then it's easier to see where you say, oh, well, what's the message in it for me? Right. But when things are going great, or what we believe is great, we never stop and think, so what's that message for me?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Because maybe at our expanded consciousness level, outside of the body, the bigger part of our consciousness, we're like, that's this big in terms of how awesome it can be.
Right.
Like I always tell people that this insight that I got a long time ago was that, the orgasm is just a tiny little insight to how blissful we are outside of the body all the time.
Right.
And you go, well, why would we just limit ourselves? Like, you can think, why would we limit ourselves from that? Well, we forget it and then we remember again. It's pretty awesome, so it's like that kind of thing, right? And that's something to retrain ourselves with, right? So it's such an important part of this entire process of consciousness and expanding our consciousness. And if we don't slow down to stop and accept, and to be present with and accept, then we will always be limited on changing things.
Right. Yes.
What does Sandy say? I don't have my reading glasses on.
Infinite choices.
Oh, go ahead.
Infinite choices to be grateful or not. Be intentional with each and every moment, remembering we are the creators of all of them and everything that is in them. LOL, that's a mouthful.
Yes. Right. But I mean, the thing is, so it's easy to say it that way. But when you say, oh, well, that's just the way my life is, right? We don't look at that as something to look at. That we say, oh, we'll see how accepting I am.
Right.
I've just accepted it will never change. I've accepted this is always how I'll be, and I love, movies like Forrest Gump, right? Because he didn't know to not be happy with them. Like if he wanted to change something, he just changed it. And we, and the onlooker is going, oh, well, he's slow or, mentally slow or whatever. It's like, but look at that's the whole joke of the movie is, well, because he never told himself that he couldn't do anything.
Right.
He just decided to do it. And what if the intelligence that we're talking about is just how big the ego is to tell you, you can't do that because you're not smart enough. You can't do that because you don't have the means. You can't do that because of this.
Right.
Or on the flip side, you can only do this much because you will only ever have this much. That's what we tell ourselves. And then we say, oh, that doesn't sound so bad, right? That's just acceptance. So it's saying, okay, okay, look at how wonderful it was for me to create that. How wonderful it was to look at all the beliefs around it that created it. And now what will I do to make it like, what can I do to even expand it more? Do I want to saturate myself in that even more? Because then you say, oh, I have this infinite ability, this infinite palette. Do I want to saturate myself in it more? Or do I want to do something else? Do I want to expand in my divine, like my divine birthright of whatever, stepping into my power in more ways than
If
this?
I allow that to nourish who I am, what can that bring?
Right.
What can that allow my creations to flow to?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
flow
If I
into?
allowed even more, right?
Right.
Even more. If I'm like, okay, so I did allow myself to be this smart, or just known for this, known for being physical or whatever, like we were talking about. And now I'm going to fill up the whole basin of all of the non-physical stuff. And I'm really going to immerse myself in that, because that's part of my passion too. And like, even, more fulfilled and saturated. It's a possibility. So those are the thoughts to think of. So let's do our clearing for the week. I Go ahead.
Oh, I've just, we've talked about so much.
Yeah. How about I accept myself for where I am, and I allow myself to expand. I don't know. I allow myself to expand beyond, to see where I can be in that presence in every moment. I allow myself to, right? In that, I love that presence and self-responsibility.
Yeah. I allow presence and self-responsibility.
Yeah. And then allow myself the freedom to change and expand and even more. And play with that. That just feels great. That feels like a playground in itself.
It feels like there's that's like the tip of an iceberg.
Like, oh, let's go play.
Yeah.
All right. So everybody, you know what to do. Everybody get comfortable, take a deep breath, close your eyes. As we step out of separation back into wholeness and oneness, and we set ourselves at the vibration where that is the truth, that is from where we exist, create, and experience. All right. How went we out there?
I think I can just spend the day out there.
Yeah, in the beginning, it was funny because I saw a whole bunch of us sitting with all these presents, right there, all these presents sitting around like Christmas morning.
Unopened presents.
Yeah, unopened presents. And then we started opening our presents. And then it was interesting because then I saw that all of us were, individuals were encompassed in a bigger one, for the collective. And it was like, oh, wow, look at that. And it just sort of like was a Russian doll thing, right? The concentricity thing,
Right. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very nice. And I just I don't even know. I saw stuff and I was like, okay, I'm just going to sit with this and let it do what it needs to do. So.
Right. I kept seeing for some reason like the pyramids. And I kept seeing like, the pyramid as you see it, and then with the point, and then you'd see another pyramid inverted and the point touched. And then another one with the base to base, and then the point, and then it just kept replicating. And it was like, I'm not quite sure what that was, but it sure felt powerful.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, whatever that was at, it did feel very powerful. It was very nice. All right. Well, everybody sit present.
Everybody like, share.
Yes, please.
Subscribe.
Yeah.
However you want to show, comment, talk to us.
Please.
Let us know that you are enjoying these, and any feedback would be awesome. What are you finding when you do these clearings? Are you seeing where you're stuck? Are you seeing results? And let us know. But at a bare minimum, like us.
Yes, absolutely. Like our page, follow us, and we have a lot more coming up. So
right.
Yeah, let's take a journey together.
Right.
So have a great week, and we will see you next time. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah Sieg Avignoni
signing off on this week's Ascend a World. Have a great one.